Welcome to the DevLaunch podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories of the tech industry's rising stars, corporate America employees turned tech entrepreneurs. Hear how these folks took a risk in leaving their W-2 job to build their enterprise, the lessons they've learned along the way, and what they're doing to revolutionize this industry, one project at a time. So today I have a very special guest, Justin Cullifer. Along with his co-founder, Luke Maslow, Justin founded APG Emerging Tech, which is an Atlanta-based digital product consultancy. They guide web, mobile, and voice apps from idea to production and beyond. What makes them different is their emphasis on beyond the build, meaning they're not just designers and software developers. They analyze your go-to-market strategy, revenue model, user adoption, marketing, and other facets critical to successful digital product launch and scale. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super excited to have you. You know, the purpose of our show is we want to highlight stories like yours of emerging tech stars, the rising stars in the tech industry. And so I'm just really excited to dive in and learn a little bit more about your story, learn about what you got going on at APG Emerging Tech. But before we get into that, I just wanted to quickly give you a kudos and a shout out. You've survived the last 5 years with this company. Is that right?
Absolutely. We celebrate our 5th anniversary this August.
Nice. That's super awesome. So 5 years in the business. I mean, the statistics go that over half of businesses in the 5-year mark don't make it. Mm-hmm. So you're ahead of the curve just in that stat alone.
We feel it, and I understand why half of businesses don't make it to that point. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but it feels good to be on the other side of that equation.
I love that. I love that. Awesome. So I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about APG, but before we do that, would you mind telling us a little bit about your story? Like, where did you start your career and how did you end up where you are today?
Sure thing. Tony, I just realized last week that I've officially achieved 26 years in technology. I still think of myself as 26 years old sometimes, so that really made me feel old. But at the same time, just taking a moment to reflect on the past 26 years, it's been a heck of a ride. And admittedly, some of that time counts post high school and during college because I had to work my way through college. And I was fortunate enough to have my very first job at a tech company. They were in the payments industry. So they built the underlying platforms that process Visa and MasterCard and American Express transactions, a company called TSYS, if anyone wants to Google them. Fine company, and they really were my introduction into technology. And over the years since then, of course, I worked for them for many years, but I found my way navigating from corporation to corporation and then eventually consulting firm to consulting firm. And during that journey, I've had the opportunity to work in more of the program and project management side of the house on product delivery, and then more into the product and user experience side of the house. And that's across federal government projects, hospitality, retail, financial services, and a number of other industries. So for those who enjoy variety like I do, it's been a great journey. So that's how I really got my foot in the door, I guess you would say, into technology in the first place. And also what led me to where I am today as a small business owner.
That's super amazing. And I imagine that variety of experiences that you had leading up to starting your own business, I gotta imagine was super helpful to guide and direct the steps that you needed to take so you could see success in your business.
Absolutely. It's great to witness how different businesses operate, right? So they all have their strengths, they have their weaknesses, they have their unique cultures as a company. So all of those experiences working for all of these different companies over the years really helped form and shape what I wanted in a company once I ultimately took the big leap to start one. It was all of those experiences that gave me insight into figuring out what I wanted to do as a business as well. You know, when I worked for more of the, let's say, larger consulting firms, ones that are international in scale, you know, once a company is at that scale and that size, they are all things to all people. So no matter what problem you approach them with, they probably have a solution. At the same time, being in a leadership role within those types of organizations like that consulting firm, I felt a lot of pressure to sell a solution to every problem. So I began coloring outside of the lines that I actually enjoyed on the day-to-day basis, which further reinforced what I wanted my company's mission and purpose to be all about.
Would you say that the times of like coloring outside the line were kind of your wake-up call to be like, okay, I am not cut out to do this cookie cutter kind of like put me in this box type of role? Was that kind of like the spark that was like, this is how I know I'm going to go out and do my own thing?
It was. You hit the nail on the head. It was at the point to where as a company, as a consulting firm, we had strategic partnerships with everyone. Amazon, Microsoft, Salesforce, you name it. If there was a tech stack out there, we were a strategic partner for them. But that also meant there was this nagging pressure always there to find a fit for those platforms, no matter what problem we were solving for our customers. And I preferred to be tech agnostic and just listen to the root of what the problem is that we're solving for our customers and really figure out what's the best fit for them rather than putting them into a packaged solution. That's just how I operate. You know, everyone's different. I have a lot of friends who have majored in a tech stack. They've majored in Tableau. They've majored in Salesforce, and they have great careers, and they're very happy people and successful people. That's just not for me. That's just not my thing. I want to find a unique solution. Well, maybe not unique, but the specific solution to the specific problem and make sure it's the right fit. Like putting on a good pair of shoes at a shoe store. You don't want to wedge your foot into something that looks great but feels uncomfortable. That's how I want to operate from a business leader perspective.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think it speaks to, I think there's a thread, right, in any entrepreneur where you just see the world a little bit differently and you want to create something that's more form factor to what you see the real need of the client to be. And you taking the leap, I think, is you need to do that, right? If you're ever going to make change the way that you want to see change happen, you got to take that plunge. So well done. You took that plunge. And that was about, like we said, about coming up on 5 years. So I want to bring us back to May 2017. So about 5 years ago. What was the turning point? I know we talked a little bit about some of the circumstances that gave rise to you being wanting to go and start your own thing. But like, what was the specific turning point for you? Because you had made a really solid career at this consulting firm. What was the turning point for you?
It's hard to put a pin on any one specific thing. It was a goal I had been working towards and had been thinking about for a long time. And I would counsel anyone who's thinking about going out on their own or starting a new business to really put a lot of forethought into it and line things up so that you are prepared to take that step. So for me, it was this almost perfect constellation-like alignment of all of the stars where I felt like I had a strong network. I had started networking beyond just the company and just beyond my teammates within the company and into chambers of commerce and interest groups throughout my region and area. So that was one. So I had a broader awareness that, yes, indeed, there was demand for what I could do out there. And I met some really nice people who I felt like could probably be a good sounding board for me as I went out on this adventure. The second part was from a financial perspective. Starting a business is not something it is something you could do on a shoestring budget, but it's really good to have a bit of a stockpile in case of a rainy day. And let me tell you, over the past 5 years, we have had rainy days. And thank God we had an umbrella because those things are going to happen. And I think that's regardless of what type of business you're starting, whether it's technology or you're going to be the next plumber in your area, right? You need to have some cash for a rainy day. So that convergence of network plus cash plus just being able to, take these notes I've been doodling in notebooks over all of these many months and synthesize it into a value proposition that, as I started socializing it with peers in the industry and also just friends and neighbors, they were like, yeah, I get it. I get what you do. I would hire you if I needed that. And that was basically that boost of confidence that I needed to say, okay, here's what I want to do. There's demand for it. And I have a network that I can start reaching out and starting to test the waters to see if there's something there. So I would say that was the moment to where, as a family, we looked at each other and said, yeah, it's okay. You can go and try this thing. Let's go try it. And that's exactly what we did.
That's great. Yeah. And it sounds like in your story, it wasn't just, like you said, it wasn't just one turning point. There was a constellation of factors that said, now is the time. And a couple of those factors, just to kind of reiterate what you had said, was number one, I mean, obviously there was the impetus, there was the desire, and I think that's not unique to entrepreneurs. Like, we all have the desire to do that thing. But there was other things that I thought was interesting. You said was you had a group, you had a network, right? You knew people. And that, as we're going to get into in just a minute, like, that network is so crucial at the very beginning. So there's that aspect. There's the financial aspect you just had shared a little bit about, which I think can sometimes be overlooked for, earlier entrepreneurs or newer stage entrepreneurs. So super cool. Constellation of different factors ultimately brought you into where you are today. Very, very cool.
That's right.
So I'm going to switch gears here for a minute, because I actually found APG Emerging Tech on Clutch. That's how I found out about you guys. I was perusing through and I saw, one of the reasons I love Clutch so much is because I feel like it helps to weed out some of the fluff reviews.
Oh, for sure.
And you and I were talking a little bit about this before, but if you're ever on Google reviews, sometimes they have the most ridiculous reviews that are clearly not for that business. So
that's right.
Clutch is a great resource. And I'm just noticing, you guys are very highly rated on Clutch. I would just love to understand a little bit more, like, how would you, or what would you attribute to your success with such high ratings on Clutch in particular?
The thing I like about Clutch and their reviews is that there is actually a human involved. It's not just a workflow that gets sent to your clients and they click through and say 5-star, 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 submit, right? It's actually an interview-based process. So there's, for me to be willing to put my client out there and be willing to ask them to, hey, would you sit down for 10 minutes with this person from Clutch to provide a testament to the type of work and that we provide and the ways in which we work? That's a big deal. That's a big thing to ask of a client to do versus just a little survey they might click through and take 30 seconds to complete. So Clutch actually sits down with your clients virtually and asks them a series of questions and synthesizes what their feedback is into a concise review that gets posted to the Clutch website. So I like it from the perspective of, I know what all goes into it. I hope other people understand that process and how meaningful those reviews are for our company and for any company that's out on their website, right? So that's one. I would say one of the things that's a little bit of a challenge, just being fully transparent, is that my business is not a high volume, high number of transaction business. We only serve a small number of clients in any given time, and certainly in any given year. So we don't have dozens of reviews on Clutch. Every review that you see out there, of the ones I'm aware of, there aren't many for our company. Those are customers that are still customers of ours. We're continuing to deliver for them. So it's not as though we do one project last year and then we stay on and do a second project, we get multiple reviews, each client gets one review. So if you're a higher volume company and you're just cranking out apps, or you're cranking out widgets, go ahead and collect those reviews, allow them to stack up. But if you are a buyer out there and considering a supplier like us, just because you see a few number of reviews doesn't mean you're a bad company. It just may mean that they are not high volume.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good call out for all the non-tech people, the people who are looking for, services like what APG Emerging Tech offers. Yeah, and it's I'm glad that you said that, because I think one thing that you had mentioned to me before was there were a few instances where you've had clients for pretty much ever since you started.
Yes.
But they can only submit that one review. They're not going to let you resubmit a review for that same company.
That's correct. So that's a little bit of a challenge. We have a relationship with the folks over at Clutch, and we've provided that constructive feedback. And just like any good product development team, they have a backlog, and they should be evaluating all of those interesting ideas that make their way into their backlog.
Yeah, totally the case. Well, what was it like for you, Justin? So like, let's again go back to like those early days. Here you were as a consultant working for a big name consulting company, and you were a technical expert, by all means, a technical expert in that craft. What was that transition like to go from technical expert into business owner? Like, what was your biggest learning curve when you were starting out? And also, like, how did you overcome that learning curve?
Operating a business and working for a business are two very different things. I would say that was the biggest learning curve for me. I got spoiled working for the large consulting firms and the corporations before that, because there was a lot of infrastructure behind the scenes. There were legal departments and marketing departments and sales teams. There was a lot of infrastructure there that allowed me to step up to the plate and actually deliver, which I took it for granted. And I think that when you hear someone say, follow your passion, start your business, we hear that all the time. I see posts about that on Facebook and LinkedIn constantly. But what I don't see a lot of posts saying is follow your passion, but you also need to get ready for working long nights and weekends and figuring out your financials, healthcare, benefits, legal, contracts, all of these things that go around the work that you're about to do. So there are things that I didn't really think about or realize I needed to have. So when we deliver projects for larger corporations or municipalities today, we must have liability insurance. That's general liability, workers' compensation, of course, cyber liability, and a number of other levels of insurance that are in the millions of dollars of coverage. That all has to be set up before I go and do the first project at any of the major corporations with whom we have a relationship. So really take the time to do that research and figure out for your trade, for the thing you want to do, what all do you need to have in place, and just give yourself the grace and the time to get that stuff set up. None of it is particularly difficult. It's more of a volume thing. And there are experts out there to help you through all of these processes, whether you hire them or just talk to people in your network. There are people who know how to get through it, because just keep in mind, every time you drive up and down the highway and you see a row of businesses, all of those businesses have gone through these steps. That means you can too. So it is daunting at first. And I think I underestimated that. I just thought, I'm going to let the world know what we do. We're going to go out there and do it. And we did, plus all of that administrative stuff.
Yeah. So like, is that how you overcame the hurdle? Like, did you just like upskill a ton? You just watched tons of YouTube videos, did a lot of research, like, or did you hire somebody? Like, what was the decision you made early on?
Early on, we tried to do it all ourselves. We really did. We watched the YouTube videos. We did the LegalZoom Inc. file sort of route to figure out contracts and forms and all of that. And and in some cases that was enough to get us started. It really was. But at some point we took a look at how much time are we spending on that administrivia versus actually doing client delivery. And we found resources, let's just say like hiring a bookkeeper, for example. That sounded expensive at the surface because I thought bookkeepers must be expensive people. They're very smart and they do lots of financial things. So it clearly costs a lot. No, they really don't. You can find good, affordable bookkeepers and take that off my plate. And every hour of administrivia I take off of my plate is another hour I can deliver for my clients.
That's right.
So that's the way we look at it. It's a true cost benefit analysis. And there are still some things that we keep in-house and handle ourselves. But for some of the more intensive things, we free up that time so that we can go out and do more delivery.
So do you find that on that decision of like what to keep in-house and what to outsource, do you find that, I guess, like, what are the factors, or what have been some of the factors that have played the most critical roles in helping you to assess, I'm going to hire somebody else to do it versus I'm going to learn how to do it myself?
It comes down to an expertise space. So my co-founder, Luke, is very, very good with finances and all of things financial and legal. That is his strength. So there are a lot of things that he will handle for the company in that space. for me, that's you might as well be speaking Greek to me. I just it's not my strength.
Yeah.
So some of those sorts of things, we'll just divide and conquer and figure out who in-house could actually take these things and run with them. That doesn't mean that we don't encounter situations along the path that are so complex that we need to bring in an attorney, right? Or we need to bring in an accountant. Certainly, as we got into our third and fourth year as a business, we started to realize from an accounting perspective just how many things we could write off as a business, expenses, when you look at travel and mileage and equipment, purchasing your laptops and equipment, things like that. We weren't accounting for those as well as we could. So that's where we handed that all over to professionals, because they save us so much in taxes, they more than pay for themselves. So it's just a smart decision to make to at least, even in your early days, consult with one of those individuals so they can get you on the right path. And then long term, as you start making income, figure out that tipping point to where you might want to just hire them to handle that for you and free you and your teammates up to do more for your clients.
That's really good. Yeah, I heard you say the big thing there with expertise, because no two co-founders, no two founders are going to have the same exact background or proclivity, really. And so if you already have that, natural inclination, like you said, you're with your co-founder, a natural inclination towards finance, you might be okay to own that for a little bit, right?
That's right.
And then to your point, it's like, but then there does come a point in time where that then becomes a detracting force from your ability to deliver value for your clients or to reach new clients. And so there is a point where it's like, it makes more sense. It costs you actually less money in the business to have an expert do it for you than for you to do it yourself.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that is really great. So a lot of software development agencies are started by one or more highly talented and technical software developers. But one of the things I remember you had mentioning to me, I think, I can't remember if it was on our call or if it was just in LinkedIn messages back and forth, but you told me you wouldn't want me to code anything. That was the exact quote. I've got it here in quotes. So we know that software development itself is not necessarily in your background per se. So what was it about tech in particular? What drew you to starting this type of business as opposed to something else?
Sure. I am fascinated by what software can do, just plain and simple. The way that it can interpret data, the way that it can anticipate things, the way that it can predict things, right? There's so many facets to what a solid web application or mobile application or analytics can do for you. So just that natural curiosity, and I guess growing up and kind of being in college and then into the workforce right around the .com boom and then eventual bust, it was just a fascinating time to get into it and to begin understanding what tech could do. So that's what drew me into that whole product space around technology. Software engineers are amazing people. The folks who write the code, they are amazing people. But typically, they don't begin writing code unless someone has fed them a design or a specification to describe what is this product they're about to build. So it takes a village. There aren't that many software engineers who come up with the idea, solve a problem, create the marketing, create the sales, the promotional strategy and go-to-market strategy, and also build it. That's a rare individual who would do all of those things. So that makes me very, very comfortable operating in the software space because I'm on the front end. I'm hearing the problems from the customers. I'm hearing what they want to fix and coming up with original ideas for how to solve those problems or create new opportunities for their businesses. So when I say that you wouldn't want me writing a line of code, that doesn't mean you wouldn't want me creating that specification, doing the due diligence and research and designs that all lead up to building the software. And then ultimately, once that software is built, test it, make sure it meets everyone's expectations, and then come up with a plan for deploying it to the users who are ultimately going to use the thing. So on my team, we have a very wide breadth of skill sets, but our predominant major as a company are in strategists, consultants who are strategists, consultants who are designers, and product people. We also have a software engineering team and leadership in the software engineering vertical of our organization. who majored in writing code, and I leave it to the experts. They are always at the table, and they're always hearing the earliest of conversations, because that's good for them. It's good for them to have context and not just put on their blinders and start, typing hands on the keyboard. The more context we can feed them, the better architecture they'll come up with and the better solutions they'll come up with.
Man, that is so good. And I think what you're touching on too is like, as you surveyed the landscape, it's like you had this perfect complement that comes around a technical expert, where you saw mostly like a lack in the industry, which is a technical expert is very capable to write the code, but they might not get the bigger picture. They might not be able to efficiently connect all the pieces that you had so much experience dealing with as a management consultant, that you can come in and say, hey, yeah, I might not be the one to write the code, but I can bridge the gap and I can, kind of make this a full product from start to finish, which is a very unique skill set.
Well, that's correct. When we meet with our customers, and the way we've grown is truly through our network. The majority of our business has been through our network. But the conversations we're having aren't typically, can you make Salesforce integrate with my billing system? Okay, sometimes it is, and we do those systems integrations. Sure. Typically, it's a problem statement. They're saying, I need to reduce call volume coming into my operations team. I need to reduce the amount of emails that I'm getting with the same question over and over again from my customers. They're always bringing a statement to us, and it's around a business need. And coincidentally, technology can typically help with a lot of those business needs. And that's our job, is to explain, here's what we can do. We might need to build something for you, or we might need to pick a platform that already exists and just implement it for you. So I like being that sort of bridge between the two worlds, where we have business operators and then the technology fulfillment sides.
That is so good. And you hit the nail on the head, the term bridge. That's because that's the thing I keep on thinking about. It's like that's literally what you are. You're the bridge to get the problem to become now the transformation into a solution. So that is super cool. So I want to speak real quick to just kind of the situation we're in right now, right? Where everybody's speculating on a recession. It seems to be in everyone's vocabulary for the last, call it year and a half or so, right? And there's no indication that we're going to be out of it anytime soon. I don't know if we're technically in one right now, but like there's just this awkwardness where many people are kind of just pulling back a little bit. It seems like they're pulling back a little bit in preparation. So with this slowdown in the economy, we know that companies are shifting their spending habits and their priorities. So have you, in your experience so far, have you noticed any changes as you have conversations with prospective clients? Or are you seeing that there's just about as much demand as there has been for a while?
Yeah, Tony, I feel like demand follows the news cycle. And we've seen that especially this year. Earlier this year, when interest rates were climbing, there was this collective sort of gasp and clutch of the pearls and everything came to a screeching halt. I would say that was in the early springtime of this year. But once we really all collectively acclimated to this new normal of rates are continuing to increase and prices are continuing to increase, I feel like we saw our customers beginning to invest again in their people and their platforms. So things thawed out, I would say, in the April-May timeframe on our end. Demand right now is very strong. So we have projects that are lined up through the rest of this year, which feels really, really good. I appreciate that. Thank you to all my customers who are watching this.
Yes.
And, mostly our customers are providing services in healthcare and financial services. And in those prices are continuing to rise. So as consumers, let's be empathetic and put ourselves in their consumers' shoes. So those consumers are now having to pay more for healthcare. They're having to pay more for their mortgage and their car payments. With higher costs come higher expectations. So our customers are quite savvy. They have already picked up on this and said, yes, we have to charge more, but we also have to reinvest in our experiences. So they're creating better online portals, better billing experiences, better customer service experiences. They know that, yeah, it's a difficult economy, but we have to put money back into our business and our operations, because that's going to behoove us long term.
Yeah.
If I'm a customer and I'm paying a peak amount for any given service or product, I'm going to shop around, because remember, goodness, it was only maybe 10 years ago that the price of a new luxury car, let's just say, was maybe in the $40,000 range. Now I repetitiously see in my Motor Trend magazines luxury cars in the $100,000 range.
Yeah.
I'm not there. I don't plan to go there. Thank goodness I like older cars. But you think about it, right? If suddenly you're asking consumers to spend six figures on a car, they're going to shop around and they're going to go with the dealership that provides the best product, the best service experience, and rolls out the red carpet. The same goes for the local doctor's office, the local bank, the local plumber.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to ask customers to pay more across the board, they're going to shop based on experiences now instead of just the dollar.
Wow, that's super powerful. And I'm glad that you said this, because I do think there is, from the conversations I've had, especially recently with software dev shops, there's this kind of mixed bag. I've got some people who they just are like you guys, doing very well, where you have a decent runway, and then some other people who are starting to just feel like, oh my goodness, like we're nobody's buying because it's looming recession and all that kind of stuff. And I think what this points out is the fact that there is still work out there, and that's encouraging. And I think this is probably the culmination of very consistent investments in relationships that you guys have built. I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming you guys have invested really well with relationships with external parties. You're doing a really good job marketing yourselves and continuing to iterate and to listen to the client conversations you've been having. Would you say that that's kind of why you're in the position that you're in right now, or do you have other things that you would point to?
No, bringing it full circle with our clutch conversation earlier, we have fewer reviews than other companies out there that are higher volume and higher the quantity of transactions level, right? That's because we really do invest in the partnerships with our customers. We feel like we're part of their team, and they feel like we're part of their team. The fact that we happen to work for APG Emerging Tech is a formality. We are locked arms, sleeves rolled up, and what's urgent to them is urgent to us. Plain and simple. We had I didn't mention this earlier. We have 9 people. We're not a big company.
Wow.
And our engineering workforce scales as it needs to, right? So we are in lockstep with our customers, share their sense of urgency, and we really get to know what drives their business. What are their customers expecting? What are their internal employees expecting? What can we do to increase and improve their employee experience as well? So we're not transactional. We're not just another SaaS product where you go and put in your credit card and buy a license and log in and use it. We are in the people business, and we have highly skilled people that believe in our 2 core values, which are empathy and stewardship. And I think that goes a long way and helps us further stand out in a very, very crowded tech consulting space.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, again, it gets back to that conversation of, you got a lot of technical experts who start these businesses, and sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between, really the business you're in is not software development. I'd argue it's people, right? You're in the people business, you're in the service business, you're in the people business. So that's a really good way of looking at it. And on this note, specifically about marketing, I have an oddly specific question, and I did prime you for it. So, hopefully you have some initial thoughts on it. But I'm going to name 6 of what I'll call some of the most common channels, marketing channels, that many software development agencies use in their marketing mix. And what I want you to do is I want you to rank them highest to lowest in terms of how you prioritize them in your business in particular. So,
all right.
If you can't remember all of them, that's totally fine. Maybe just try to say which is the most important and which is the least important in terms of priority.
Okay.
So number 1, word of mouth referrals. Number 2, conversational prospecting, thinking about like social media as a channel. Number 3, cold email. Number 4, cold calling. Number 5, paid advertising. And number 6, SEO or organic search.
That's a good list, and that feels like a pretty comprehensive list. Maybe the only thing missing is newspapers and billboards, right? We can add those too, but we don't invest in those.
Sure.
You know, I bring it back to our core values as a company, empathy and stewardship, which will play into my answer to your question. So I think you said word of mouth. That stuck out as number one for me because there's nothing more significant than a friend of yours or someone you admire telling you how great an experience they had, right? So if a friend comes home from a trip to Paris and they say, I stayed in this great hotel, the next time you're in Paris, you have to stay there. You believe it because you know that person and you imagine that you probably like a lot of the same things. So yeah, sign me up, book me at that hotel. The same goes in our business. So word of mouth is absolutely king or queen in our business. Some of the others, so you mentioned social media. Social media is a big part of our marketing mix. And I feel like social media and certainly keeping our website current is part of just checking the pulse on your business. I go to a number of companies' websites and I look, one of the first things I look at, and this is maybe because I'm a big nerd, is I look at the footer of their site and see when is the last time the copyright date was updated. If it still says 2020 or 2021, I hate to say this, but I assume you're out of business. So if I see fresh content in your social media channels, like on LinkedIn especially, that tells me you're alive and you are busy and you have something going on. So that's step one. Are you alive? Great. Everything's uphill from there. And so for us, we put content out there that we feel like is relevant for our customers and for our peers in the industry to hopefully help them solve a problem or complete a task a little bit more efficiently. So we don't just publish stuff for the sake of showing we're alive. A lot of it does have meaning in our unique consulting space.
Awesome.
Some of the other things I think you mentioned, and I may have cringed visually on the camera when you said cold email and cold calling. Again, empathy. Put yourself in your recipient's shoes. How much do you like waking up on Monday morning and having an inbox full of spam emails that came in overnight or over the weekend from vendors who want you to hire them to do software development or to hire you to be their financial advisor or pick any of the other topics? It makes me feel icky, and I imagine it would make my customers feel icky. So we don't do that at all. We always ask for a warm introduction. You know, certainly, Tony, if there was someone in your network that we thought, you know, it might be beneficial for them to meet us and vice versa, I'm going to say, Tony, would you mind making an introduction? It looks like we have this person in common. That's going to lend a lot more weight to it than me emailing that person out of the blue with zero context, with one more pitch and one more link to click and one more unsubscribe link that might or might not work. So just don't do cold calling and cold emailing. However, I assume, Tony, you're going to post this all over the internet with comments underneath. If I'm wrong, tag me in the comment and tell me how you did it, because I will need some convincing.
Yes, understandable. And you know what? I don't think that response is necessarily like unfounded. I don't think it's uncommon by any means. You know, I think for the most part, many people really struggle with cold email, cold call, especially cold call. Goodness sakes. And I think you've got an interesting perspective on it, which is it gets down for you to a matter of core values, right? And it's like, if this doesn't jive with our core values, then yeah, like I think that has a huge role to play in how you choose to strategize your marketing mix.
Yes, it does. And a lot comes back to your business model. If you're a high transaction, high volume business, then that may make more sense. Let's say you're a concert promoter and you're putting on concerts in a 5,000 seat auditorium. Yeah, you may need to send out a lot of cold emails to get people to buy tickets, but that has broad appeal. What we do doesn't have broad appeal necessarily. It's very specific to a business person who has a need to solve a problem. So casting a wide net just doesn't make a lot of logical sense in our particular space, but it could for someone else's.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that I've explored with a few other software dev agency founders is has to do with like how refined is the value proposition or how targeted is the value proposition, right? So I know that APG Emerging Tech, you specialize, was it healthcare and is it fintech?
Financial services, that's right.
And so you guys have a specialty, but I would assume even within that specialization, the gamut of value drivers, or the things that you guys can do to bring value to your prospective clients, it's going to vary depending on how the conversation goes, right? There's not like one particular value proposition that you're going to have. In contrast, many of these product-based companies have a very clearly defined value proposition. So doing something like cold call or doing something like cold email is a little bit more, you know, you can put your hands around it because
That's
it's
true.
something more tangible. But in your experience, it's like I would imagine it would be really hard to convey value proposition in a cold email with the services you guys provide.
That's right. That's right. Now, it is a constant challenge and a constant conversation, right? So as a team, we're always talking about how do we make it so simple for customers to know when to call us. It's if I have a leaking sink, I know exactly when to call a plumber. If I have a car broken down on the side of the road, I know exactly when to call a mechanic. We want it to be that simple, when to call us. And that's something we constantly work on and constantly refine as a business.
And just out of curiosity, like what is that? What's that trigger point, or what has that trigger point been for most of your ideal clients?
It's typically a client who is in the services space. So, taking all of the different types of businesses that you're in or that exist. We don't have a lot of work in manufacturing necessarily, but in services where they are providing healthcare, they are providing banking, they're providing municipal services. We're doing a great project for a large city right now. There is typically a point where someone in that organization says, I've got an inkling that there's a better way to do this than we're doing it today. And that's exactly where we love to start the conversation. We just want to listen, have us there at the table and say, here's what I'm experiencing, or here's what my customers are experiencing. What could we do? So that's one end of the spectrum. There are other ends of the spectrum where we have customers that we engage with who say, we have a pretty well-baked idea. We know we want to build a mobile app. We've been talking about it for a couple of years. We're ready to go. Let's go. And so, we meet people at different points on the product journey, but I think it all comes back to it's a service provider that's meeting a need, and we can bring technology to the table to help them be more effective and serve their customers that much better.
Yeah, and effective is definitely the word. Effective, and I imagine efficient in many contexts as well.
That's right.
Saving money through automations and stuff like that has got to be a big part of the value proposition as well.
It is. We have, there's a healthcare company we have a great relationship with in the Atlanta area. They provide EAP services. And for those of you who may not be familiar, and Tony, you probably are, is employee assistance programs. So if you work for a corporation, they may provide employees counseling services or legal advice, things that are an HR type benefit. Well, the really cool thing is this company has been doing this for many, many years. And they said, it's time to take it mobile. Let's provide these same services through a smartphone. And the app that we designed and built for them is in the hands of over 1 million users of companies with whom this EAP provider provides those services. So now employees who work for, I won't give out their client list, but they can pull up this app and have a live telehealth conversation with a counselor, even from their job site. Which is a pretty big deal. That's the type of work that is meaningful. I can sleep well at night knowing someone can access, counseling on the go through this program. That feels really good. And so we both solved a problem to increase access, but we made their company more marketable and more appealing because now they can go to any prospective corporation and say, hey, not only do we do what other EAP providers do, they can do it on the go, on their smartphone. So it's creating those sorts of opportunities that not only streamline a process, but potentially create new revenue channels for our customers. That is a big deal and feel good.
Yeah, man. And the thing that's like connecting in my mind right now, as you've said that, is the thing that's so cool and unique about APG Emerging Tech is that because you're not just a software developer, you're not just a UX designer, you are total end to end. You can work with these healthcare companies and really be a thought partner with them in how do you then take this and tell the story of value to your end client, and that's going to be an incredibly valuable tool chest to have for them to have at their disposal.
It is, and that again comes back to feeling like we're part of the team. We're not just transactional, being handed a requirement and going and building that requirement. We're actually at the table, riffing on ideas with our customers, facilitating workshops, doing the whole whiteboard and sticky note exercise up front. And then as we're building the product, we're coming up with that deployment plan of how do we promote it? How do we train people on how to use it? What does the backlog look like for the next release and the one after that? So we try to be a very thoughtful partner with our customers to bring that very well-rounded perspective to launching any new product.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, I have to admit, this next question was not something that I wrote, but it's something that's top of mind for me. And I would love to get your perspective on it, because I think, again, we've established you've been doing this for 5 years. You guys are doing excellent work. So I'd love to just get your perspective on it, but it has to do with pricing. This is a common pain point, I think, in custom software dev agencies that I talk with. And it's this struggle of, when you first start off, most people, if not everybody, is probably going to start with an hourly rate. But then at some point, there's like a juncture in your growth where you kind of pivot and you take slightly different approaches to how you price your projects and all that kind of stuff. Where would you say APG Emerging Tech currently is as it relates to how you approach pricing projects?
That's a great question. I feel fortunate being a smaller company that we don't have the layers of overhead that many of the larger consulting firms have. So our prices really are more competitive than our peers, but our delivery is certainly at, if not a bit better than some of the larger firms. So that feels good. I feel like when I have a conversation about price with our clients, it really comes back to the value that we're bringing to them. I think it would behoove anyone who's thinking about starting a business to do their market research and see what are companies like yours charging for similar services in your market. It's kind of funny. I've seen colleagues of mine who left big consulting where, candidly, our hourly rates were almost that of attorneys. And we could justify it because we work for a big name brand, and attempt to go out as an independent and attempt to charge that same hourly rate. And it just doesn't work that way. Baked into that hourly rate, and your customers know, were all of those layers of executive leadership, sales, marketing, HR, and so forth. At a smaller firm, you don't have that. And there's not that much appetite for that. So I think as long as you're bringing a good value to your customers and making sure that it's market competitive for companies of your same scale, then you really can't go wrong. And as you mentioned, sometimes engagements are better to be billed on a time and materials basis, hourly rate, in other words, or a fixed bid. It's good to have an open and upfront conversation with your clients to talk about which is better for them in their financial forecasting, which is really important. They're often asking you for an estimate because they're working on their annual budget. They need to know what number to plug into that line item. So ask them, and also have a candid conversation around what is their budget. It can be awkward to ask someone, what do you have to spend? But once you build a good relationship with them, they'll understand that you're not trying to spend every penny they've got. It's just trying to say, should I give you a Rolls-Royce solution, or should I give you a good, reliable Toyota solution? And you may be able to find a compromise in there.
Yeah, that's really good. And do you find that when you're first starting off those projects, do you tend, like, if you look at your total mix, I know it's probably a little bit of both of them, but do you find that the majority of the projects, you end up fixing the bid at a certain fixed price, or do you kind of gravitate more towards like you said, a time and materials approach where it can help you kind of remain agile and kind of roll with the punches as the project progresses?
Most in our world, most of our projects are more at a capacity level. So I'll phrase it like this. When you build a product, let's pretend we're building a new mobile app. It's not once and done. You don't build it, launch it, and you never touch it again. You build it and launch what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product. And then you have a backlog of enhancements that need to be made, want to be made, all in response to customer feedback or security or just improvements in technology, right? So a product is this living thing you have to take care of. So in that regard, we typically build more of a model of a capacity of, here's our team, here's the composition of individuals it will take to build and nurture this product, and we do this over an extended period of time. Is how we would put it. That helps us be much more flexible when a customer has a changing demand, for example. So let's just say the hot topic today is we need to deploy something in an app that does scanning of receipts and OCR of receipts. That's the hot topic today. Well, a week from now, conditions could change, and that feature needs to be deprioritized and replaced with something else. If you have our team there and in place and working hand in hand with yours, then we can be more flexible and make those adjustments, versus a fixed bid sort of contract would have a definite scope, a definite time frame, and any adjustments to that, you're going to get into change order territory.
Yep. Which can get a little clunky and be a little bit uncomfortable, and may not always serve the purpose of what your client is needing in that moment. So that's super helpful perspective. Like I said, it's a hot topic that we're talking a lot about. We're going to be talking a lot about on this show for sure. And I was like, I got to get his perspective because I feel like you have some thoughts on the topic. But well, Justin, thank you so much. This has been an excellent show. I knew it would be. But I want to give you a moment now. This is the way I love to end all my episodes, is I want to give you a platform to essentially speak to your younger self, right? I want you to speak to, maybe it's somebody who's in consulting, but probably more likely is somebody who is currently in corporate America. They're probably some type of engineer, somebody who's more of a technical expert in this craft. And I want you to just give advice to that individual, somebody who's like, man, I'd love to start my own thing. Or maybe they just started something and they're a year or they're 2 years in, and they're just wanting a little bit of advice. What sage wisdom, words of wisdom would you give to that younger version of yourself? First thing I would say is stay out of your own way. Don't put up those mental blockers, or don't talk yourself out of trying anything. There is room for you, and there's room for your business in the marketplace, plain and simple. The easiest thing you can do, especially in, pick a town like Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, Dallas, just drive around and look around at the number of businesses and the number of office towers and the number of billboards. Those all started with someone with an idea just like yours, or just like I had when I was much younger, and they made it happen. So there absolutely is room for you and room for what you want to do. And stay out of your own way really means don't talk yourself out of reaching out to people. We did talk about cold emails earlier, but hey, roll the dice. If you feel like it's going to work for you, go for it. But don't get in your own way. If there's a morning where you wake up and you say, oh, I was up really late, I don't really have the energy today, go find the energy, because no one's going to get it done except you. If there's a networking event where you might go and meet some people, even if you're an introvert, go out there and meet one person. You don't have to meet 50 people at a networking engagement. Meet one and have a great conversation. And guess what? If that goes well, they'll probably introduce you to their friends. So just stay out of your way, put yourself out there, and know that there is room for you and what you want to do. You heard it. You heard it here. Justin said, get out of your own way. And man, is that ever good advice for entrepreneurs, especially people like myself, who maybe a little bit more can be on the perfectionist side of things. You just need to kind of get out of the way. Know you're not going to do it perfectly, and just put yourself out there. What excellent advice to be leaving with our listeners. So again, Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. Your insights and your journey with APG Emerging Tech have been very insightful, just like I thought they would be. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. Let's talk again soon.
I'd love that. I would love that. And thank you all to our listeners. If you found value in the podcast today, please share it with your friends and subscribe for future episodes. Also, don't forget to leave us a review, because it helps other people find us and hear inspiring stories just like Justin's today. And if you are the founder of a software development agency, or you know somebody who is, and you'd like to share something exciting you're up to with our audience, drop me a note at tony@equip.com. That's ACCQUIP.com.